Hey everybody, JJ here. Back with another Wednesday episode of Zoom Networking. And, we have some really great speakers coming on our calls. And I've been really blessed to meet some unbelievable folks. Our guest speaker today is out of Pace Morby Sub 2 community. As I like to say, if you haven't heard of Pace Morby, you're probably living under a rock, particularly if you're dealing with the real estate industry whatsoever. Pace has the leading education program in the country right now, but we're not here to talk about Pace today. We're here to talk about our guest speaker, the infamous Mr. The Q, Daniel Quijano. Again, hey, how are you doing today, my friend?
I am doing really, really well. I'm very excited to be here. Happy to see all the people that are here with us. I'm excited to get into the conversation.
Oh, brother, I am so excited to have you here. I have seen your name for quite a while. I was really apprehensive about reaching out because when we're new to Sub 2 and we see the rock stars such as yourself, it's like, I am not worthy. I am not worthy.
No, we're all normal people just getting started, trying to find our way. And I guess part of my way is I talk a lot. So I guess that serves in this industry, right?
You're awesome, brother. Let me ask you, man, what part of the country are you from?
I currently live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Very, very high energy, heavily populated. It's like New York City, except completely different and not like that at all. So, for reference.
Yeah, no, New Mexico is the land of enchantment. Is that not the?
Yeah, most people that live here call it the land of entrapment. My girlfriend would agree with that statement. But yeah, more or less, it's got some enchanting features for sure.
Yeah. So, how long have you been in New Mexico?
So I actually was born and raised here. I grew up out here. I left when I joined the military a long time ago. I was 17. And then when I got out of the military, I lived in the East Coast. I lived in Florida for about 13 years, a couple of different states out there. And then I moved back in 2015, so about 7 years ago.
So let me ask you, you mentioned the military. Were you overseas at all? Did you travel overseas with the military?
I did. Yeah. So I joined in 99. And I was actually on 9/11. We had just got back from being deployed right when that happened. So it was really an interesting time to be in the military for sure.
So did your interest in real estate, was that something that came about while you're in the military or after the military? How did you decide you wanted to move into the realm of real estate?
It's funny, right? Fun fact about that. So I've always been kind of a serial entrepreneur ever since I was a kid. When I was 16 years old, my mom was, just like any other teenager. She was like, go get a job, go work at McDonald's or something. And my first job was selling rainbow vacuum cleaners. So shout out to the Cutco lady, because I understand the hustle. But I've just always been like that. I've never understood the logic of working the exact same amount as everybody else. And then, or working harder than everybody else, but getting paid the same amount. I just never understood that. And so it was funny, about a year and some change ago, a friend of mine from the military that I hadn't seen in 20 years happened to be driving through New Mexico. And so he came in and my office was all set up and he came in for a minute. He was only in town for a couple minutes and he saw what I was working on. I was like, oh, he's like, you're still doing real estate? And I was like, what do you mean still doing real estate? Because in my head, this was a new endeavor. What he reminded me is that when I was like 19 years old, I had ordered one of those infomercial how to get into real estate with no money courses from the TV and had it like in my rack on the ship. And so apparently it's, that I got the interest in real estate back then, but never actually did anything with that. I ended up doing a bunch of different things and got back into real estate about 2 years ago is when I really started, right around the time that the pandemic. Yeah.
Wow. So let me ask you, prior to 2 years ago, what were you doing before real estate? A lot of us starting from different points. What was your thing before you made the jump a couple of years ago?
So I was a consultant. I've been in consulting for quite a while. And so it was just a full service business consultant. So what I was doing right before the pandemic happened is I was overseeing a government contract from the USDA. And I was overseeing, my responsibility was to provide business support to rural small businesses. So basically helping businesses grow, helping businesses scale, helping businesses that are struggling, helping people exit. I did some stuff in the incubator world. So just pretty much anything that has to do with how do I run a business smart or better than I currently am. That's what I was doing.
Wow. Wow. Let me tell you, you're very impressive.
Well, thank you.
You know, I've seen you on the dial, nightly dial. I don't get on as much as I should, but I got on enough to know that you're somebody I needed to reach out to.
I appreciate that.
And you know, for those of us that are new, you know, you can't just sit back and watch the parade go by. You know, I saw Daniel. I realized the value he brings to the community, his intellect, and I realized he was someone I needed to know. And as I wanted to build my network, I need to build my network with the people that are doing the deal and out there. Because what that does is it elevates your game when you reach to the next level. So I really thank you for being here, my friend. So let me ask, are you married? Do the girls have a chance? Oh, you have a girlfriend. That's right. You said that.
Yes, I have a girlfriend.
You're off the market.
Over there, very much off the market. We had 5 Yorkies until Monday, and one of the Yorkies had 2 more Yorkies. So we currently have 7 Yorkies.
Oh my gosh.
Because that's what normal people do. You get 7 dogs.
Yeah.
So I haven't slept since like Saturday, in case anybody's concerned with my well-being. So we'll do a wellness check at the end of this.
I've got a little 9-week-old puppy now, and it's pretty standard operation. I'm going to be up between 2 and 4 in the morning to let the puppy out.
Yeah, that's pretty much what, and you don't, so like, look, quick little shout out to anybody who actually breeds dogs on purpose, right? This was very much not on purpose. Dogs were doing what dogs do. I was very disappointed that they weren't containing themselves and, just being, acting like young ladies and young women. They were, or young men. They were not, they were out there doing their thing. They got caught. A dog got pregnant. I did not realize how much work goes in to the whole birthing process, and like you got to watch them all the time because they're too cold or they're too hot, and they got to eat like every 8 seconds, and then the dogs are on top of each other. It's a lot. So hats off to anybody who does this for a living.
It's a handful. Yeah, I've actually got a new little puppy myself. So let's get to the real estate part of this, brother. What led you to Sub2? How'd you come across Pace? How did you get introduced to the Sub2 community or the real estate?
Yeah, so it's kind of a funny story. If anybody's ever done government contracts before, I would imagine there are different experiences, but I've never had a good time doing government contracts. They're a headache. They're messy. You do a lot of work, and then they pay you when you get around to it, right? But I've always had this thing where I want to help people, right? Everybody's good at something, and I've noticed I was good at the things that I was good at, and that's what led me into consulting. And so I enjoyed helping people overcome hurdles. I enjoyed looking at things from kind of a creative, outside of the box point of view, and using that to help businesses grow. But I was tired with the government contracts. I was worn out. I remember the last contract I was doing, I was working it for 7 months full time before I got my first payout from the government for doing it. I don't know about you guys, but going 7 months without getting a paycheck is not usually fun, especially when you're working every day. But that was what it was like. So I was just kind of burnt out. I was looking to do something different. New Mexico in and of itself is just kind of it's a different place, right? And I was used to the higher pace. And so I was looking into something else. I stumbled across some videos on YouTube about wholesaling. One of the first ones I saw was actually a Max Maxwell video, and I was kind of mind blown because I always liked the idea of real estate, but I just never understood the value of being an agent. It just wasn't for me, right? And so I was always intrigued by the idea and never got into it. When I heard about wholesaling, I was like, how can this be real? Like, how is this possible? How is this legit? So I looked into it. Probably end of 2019, I was just kind of dabbling around, and then the pandemic hit right around the time that we were starting up this contract for the small businesses. And as you guys know, right in early 2020, all the small businesses closed. So these businesses that I was supposed to be serving couldn't even open up anymore, right? So any of the tactics I would give them to help them run their business better were kind of irrelevant. So we did our best to work during that contract as best as possible, but it was tough. And so I said, you know what, this is a great opportunity to get into the real estate world. So while I was trying to manage that and that contract, I was kind of starting into the real estate space. But I felt like I had a little bit of an advantage because you spend enough time teaching people how to run a business. You would hope that you know how to build one yourself. And so I think what we realize when we're getting into something new from a business standpoint, and we're all at different places in that. A lot of us we either have very set approaches. You got to do it like this, or you got to do it like that, or let me go read the book. What's the book? Well, the book says I got to do it like this, so I'm going to do it like this. And we're very cut and dry in our approaches. And we leave out this really, really important factor of knowing yourself as a person, knowing what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And so I've always been a big proponent of that in my consulting. So I brought that into me starting my real estate business. So I did something a little bit outside of the box. I brought somebody on, a family member that was furloughed from their job. They couldn't work. And so they were like, look, I'd love to help. So they jumped in and we started this endeavor of like pulling lists and then, trying to find CRMs. And I started realizing that the real estate industry has really, really bad technology. Right. And so I'm starting to learn more about this industry and how it works. And we're trying to do all the things. And it was a long, grueling process of figuring it out because at that time, there was no community. Right. There wasn't a sub two at this point. Sub two was just beginning right around the time I was getting into real estate. And so we were kind of figuring it out on our own, kind of duct taping clips from YouTube because we didn't know anywhere else to go. And it took a while, but we figured it out and we ended up pulling a list and we ended up starting to make some phone calls. And I got on the phone with people, right? So what ended up happening was, and I actually, for anybody who knows that's in the sub 2 community, we host this thing every day called the Nightly Dial. JJ was just talking about it, and it's 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. We call sellers live. Pays like $10,000 a month for us to be able to call. He has VAs from his VA company that are calling these leads for us, and then we call them live on the Nightly Dial. So one of the things that we talk about in sales training a lot is being confident and having conversations. And I think a lot of times people, when they get into something new, they think they need product knowledge first, especially when it comes to sales. You think you need product knowledge. And if there's anything I've learned in coaching sales over the years is that that's probably one of the last things you need. Really what you need in any conversation is confidence. Just walk into the conversation like you deserve to be there, right? Because if you don't believe you, they won't believe you. Right? I say that all the time. And so when I first made I remember my first real estate call, I called and I had the conversation. And so I asked people this on the Nightly Dial. I was like, okay, out of my first 5 calls, how do you guys think I did? Right? Do you think, matter of fact, I'll throw it to you, JJ. So I made my first 5 calls, right? Knew nothing about real estate, pretty decent at sales. I have some business background and I'm doing all of that, but I didn't know anything about real estate. All I knew is that it is legal to assign a contract. That's all I knew. I didn't know what a comp was. I didn't know what an ARV was. I didn't know any of that stuff, but we had leads and we had people that answered the phone. So I called. First 5 people I called that I had good conversations with. How do you think they went, JJ? Was it like really good and I killed it? Was it bad because I'm new and I didn't know what I'm doing? Was it somewhere in the middle? What would you guess?
Oh, I'll tell you exactly what happened.
Okay, tell me. Hit me.
I wasn't even there. My fly wasn't even on the wall there. But you got a great personality. You're smooth. You're fluid. You're confident. You're able to create engagement and conversation. And I would imagine that you established rapport with all 5 of those people, and you closed all 5 deals.
That's actually a really good guess. I got 4 verbals out of the 5 conversations. So,
and I say that I was the kid that grew up stuttering, and I was picked on and bullied for years because I stuttered. I had a horrendous life as a kid. But what I've done as a result is I've become frighteningly accurate on people. And if I meet someone, I hear them talk for 5 minutes, a minute, I can tell you what kind of person they are. And, we've been sitting here listening to you talk for a while. You're confident, you're smooth, you're polished, you're sharp, you have a great presentation. No wonder your girlfriend loves you, but it's also no wonder Pace has you running the Nightly Dial because you know what you're doing and you lead by example. And again, these are attributes of the kind of people that I want to surround myself with. And so again, I'm just honored to be like everybody else right now with you on the call, learning more about you. And I was off by 1, only 4. I thought you would have got all 5.
I got to do better. I'm working on it. But here's what's funny, right? So here's the cool thing about that, JJ. So I appreciate everything that you said, right? And that doesn't come without its headaches, right? There's a saying that you either fail or you grow. And I always choose the latter, right? Like, why fail? I can always get better. I can learn and evolve from this. That's just kind of how I look at life. Life's going to hit you with stuff. The question is, what do you do when it hits you, right? That's what life's really about. It's not what happens to you. It's what you do with what happens to you. And so, this long life that we all live, hopefully we take lessons out of the things that happen to us. But here's an important point, right? Out of those, so I got 4 verbal commitments out of those 5 conversations. Do you know how many of those actually turned into completed deals?
I'll say 3. I'll just say that one of them didn't. I'd like to say all 4, but that would tend to depend on how the semantics of the transaction went ahead. But again, knowing who you are and how you present yourself, I'm sure you've done the groundwork and the foundational work, and you've done your homework, and a lot of the proper things were in place. So I would say 75%, 4 of them, or 3 of the 4.
I love that answer, and I love all of the answers that are in the chat. The real answer is 0. 0 of them turn into deals. And here's why, guys. Because being talented isn't enough. You also have to be skilled. And being skilled at something comes from being willing to be teachable, connecting with the people who have information that you don't have, and being willing to do the work, right? Being a good closer and a good conversationalist will get you very far, right? But nobody wins the Super Bowl by making it to the 1-yard line a bunch of times. You got to take it all the way through. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of us, when we get into business, we don't realize that we get so close and then we quit and we go in, we try something else, or we quit and we say that wasn't for me, or we quit. And then we, because all of our family members or our friends are making fun of us or laughing or just being judgmental from the sideline. We don't realize we were really, really close that whole time. We just didn't put the finishing touches on it, right? That's what led me to Sub 2.
That's awesome. And as you come into Sub 2, I haven't seen your portfolio, but I'm sure you're doing pretty good, as some of the rock stars are. How did things develop? The daily dial. How did the nightly dial develop? How did that come about?
So very, very long story short, right? So I had all of these deals. Every single one of them fell through. A lot of people, after spending about 6 months, because at the same time I'm doing this contract, I'm doing all these different things. I had some people that were trying to help me. All of them disappeared, right? There's a grittier version of the story. Right? All the people that were working with me at the beginning all disappeared. They all went back to doing what they were doing. So I'm here by myself trying to finish this government contract, trying to salvage all of this time that we spent and money that we spent pulling these lists and calling these people and buying the dollars and doing all the things just to get no deals done. And I had this question of like, well, what are you going to do? Is this not for you, or are you going to figure it out? So obviously I figured it out, and I started looking into alternative sources than, very light on information YouTube videos. And so I ended up, I don't even know how I stumbled across Pace. I think it was probably from Steve Trang's podcast. Then I started following him, found out that he had this community, looked in and realized, oh, wow, this is like a whole thing where it's like a mastermind, a mentorship. You can get in here and you can learn. And so that's what I did. I joined, but I actually was still doing a contract. So I joined in October of 2020. So I'll be 2 years in about 3 weeks into Sub 2. But I joined and didn't really do a lot from the business standpoint. I had to stop the business. So I went and I was finishing my contract stuff, just dealing with other things. And then 2021, I guess, I got into pushing the business more, right? Started building my pipeline, started doing a lot of stuff. And what I learned, because this conversation goes 2 different directions, but what I learned very quickly in getting into Sub 2 was a couple things. One, that this was a great community, that people actually wanted to work together. It's something I liked, and had always searched for in all of my business in the past. 2, I realized, so when I thought I was getting out of consulting, I thought I was done with that part of my life and I was getting into real estate. What I didn't realize is that there was just as much of a need for the consulting here in the real estate world as there was out there. Mm-hmm. And so it was kind of like a fish to water scenario. I saw people, I saw the needs made sense to me because I've seen these needs a million times. I know where people at. When I hear someone explain where they're at in their business, I already know all their struggles. I already know what they're dealing with because I've done this, right? And so I immediately started stepping in and just trying to help where I could. Reagan was the community manager at that time. She's no longer there. It's Melissa now. But she asked me if I wanted to be the accountability group leader for the Dallas Accountability Group, which is now Dallas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico, because I'm in New Mexico. Started helping out with that. Started doing a lot of sales coaching, started doing those types of things. And then I put together this little sales competition over a year ago, where we were doing this big role play competition. And Brent Daniels was there, and Steve Trang was there, and Pace was there, and they judged the finals. And it was like this really big thing. I was just doing it for fun because I understand how gamification can really help people get over certain things in their head. And it became this big thing. And so I just kind of, I think, started solidifying my role as just a person in the community that genuinely wanted to help people, and made myself available to do that by actually taking action, not just offering help and then never helping anybody.
That's great. That's, there's, since I've been in the community and I'm not doing what you're doing, what I'm doing is not the same level of what you're doing. My knowledge right now is not, I'm not at your level. One day as I get to be more successful, I'll grow as well and I'll become smarter, but on the topic of investment. But, my expertise has been the networking thing. And I've built certain opportunities for myself by being visible. And so that's what I share. And I see sometimes there's a need that I'm finding is to help people learn how to be visible so they could build their network. On that note, I run a networking group. What do you think what is the importance in your perspective of networking for the new or the experienced real estate investor?
So I have three answers to that, and they all play together, right? If you guys follow, whether it's Pace or really anybody who's an influencer in the real estate space right now, or really any space, what everybody's going to tell you is that content is king, right? How many have ever heard somebody say that content, you need to be putting content out there. People need to know who you are. Has anybody ever heard people encourage people to do that? Well, why do we think that is? Is it so you can get likes on your YouTube channel and followers, and you can take pictures of yourself in the mirror of your breakfast? No, it's not it. It has nothing to do with that. It's not about followers. It's about relationships, right? It's about networking. And in the world that we live in 2022, 2023, the way we network now is much more who you appear to be on social media than who you appear to be at the Toastmasters meeting, right? Now, those meetings are helpful. Go to the RIAs, go to those meetings, meet people face to face, shake their hands if you can. But the reality is my business is nationwide. I do very, very little business in my local market. Why is that possible? Because I make myself available to people throughout the country. How do you do that? By networking. And how do you network in 2022? By being active in communities, by being active on social media, and by introducing yourself in that fashion. So when you ask what the importance of networking is, I would say that I wouldn't have a business without it. 100% of my business is JV. I do not buy leads. I do not hire cold callers. 100% of my business is JV. I have thousands of leads. I've seen some people comment in here. I have people that are on my team that are lead managing leads on my team that are newer in the real estate world that are doing amazing, right? And they're here in this Zoom right now. None of that would be possible if I wasn't networking, getting myself out there and meeting other people. So to answer your question, my business wouldn't exist without it. So I don't know if that answers how important it is.
Yeah, no, I think it definitely does. I use it again from the standpoint of a guy that was shy and stuttered and wouldn't talk to people, and I hid in the corner, and I realized that wasn't going to get me anywhere. And when it comes to business, I guess I've been doing this networking. They call it networking now. Years ago, I just called it just like Brent Daniels says, talking to people.
Yeah.
And building relationships. So let me ask you, what is your thing? Single family? Is it multifamily? You doing commercial? What seems to be the thing that gets you excited with real estate these days?
Yeah. So when and I guess this circles back to your question about the nightly dial. I was asked to be a part of a business partnership last year, earlier in the year. When I kind of went into 2021, started doing some stuff. I was doing some pretty big stuff, and I had a lot of leads in the pipeline. I was doing well. Somebody asked me to be a partner with them. I decided to do that, and that did not go well. That led into me being extremely sick alongside with that. So I was in the hospital for most of the third quarter of last year. And when I came out of it, I was like, I just need to, like, this was a tough year, a very, very tough year. How do I relaunch? And so I remember I had just come back from the premiere for Pace's TV show, Triple Digit Flip. And we actually drove out because it's not that far. We were driving back. Pace is doing his 26-hour live. And so later on that night, I actually jumped in on the live. I had just gotten back home. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I jumped on. Because a lot of us were just trying to support Pace because he was up for 26 hours. And so I jumped in there and I said, "Hey, Pace, just what are your thoughts, man? I'm relaunching my business, right? Starting from scratch again, because this happens, right? A lot of times people see the people who are doing well and they think it was just this rise to glory without speed bumps. And that's usually not how that works, right? And so I was like, Pace, I'm starting this thing over again. But I want to do something special. I want to do something different, right? For me, locking up contracts is easy. And I don't say that to sound any kind of way. That's just something that comes very natural to me. I don't have to stress about that. You put me on the phone with somebody, if there's a deal there, I'm probably going to get close to getting it if I'm not going to get it. But I want to do something more than that. I want to help people. I want to do something big. And I remember Pace said, look, if anybody can do it, you can do it. Come up with something. And so I came up with this idea of like this academy where anybody could come jump into my team and just do different parts of the business, learn what they needed to learn and take that with them back to their business. So when Pace called me in January of this year and was like, hey, I know you got a lot going on. I'm thinking about doing this thing called the nightly dial. It's like a variation of the daily dial, except we're going to be calling live sellers. And he gave me some ideas. I was like, Pace, that's exactly what I'm building for internally for my team. Let's figure it out. I'll do it. And so I jumped in and we started the nightly dial, right? And I won't go into all of the stories, but 3 weeks into it, my grandmother passed away, right? And we had this whole entire thing. We got 200 people a night on Zoom for 5 hours a day. And hopefully Jay gets a feeling for this at this point because we don't know each other exceptionally well, but I don't like breaking my commitments, right? If I say I'm going to do something, I do everything in my power to make it happen, right? I think a lot of us in life want life to go a certain way, and we want the universe to, do the secret thing, and we want all these different things. But you don't even believe yourself because you make commitments, and then it's like it goes in one ear and out the other. You'll make commitments and don't even follow through, right? A lot of us are out here trying to get the universe to bend to our will, and we don't even bend to our own will, right? And so I think sometimes it starts with these basics of like, if I make a commitment, let me do everything I can to follow through with it, right? If life happens and things fail, do I quit or do I keep going? How do I keep going? And so that's kind of the approach that I took when going into this. So the nightly dial happens. I'm building my team. I'm building the business. And so fast forward, here I sit, right? So I know I addressed the nightly dial portion that you had asked a minute ago. I don't know that I answered the second question you have, because I went off on a tangent. So I'm sorry if you need to re-ask the question.
I think you kind of covered all of it, tell you the truth. I mean,
okay.
you've got a wide brush and everything kind of relates to one another. But as far as the nightly dial, yeah, Pacey contacted you and that's how that came about.
Oh, you asked about my business. So how's my business? So the summary answer to all that, because that part played into it. So yeah, I'm all JV. We have a couple thousand leads in our pipeline right now, all of which come from different students. We're primarily single family. So Jasper's here. He recently jumped on, has been helping on the team. Hope you don't mind me calling you out, Jasper. Hopefully you're having a good time so far on the team. But we had to hire 5 people last week. We're looking to hire a couple of more because my whole business is, when I say JV, here's what I mean. So if somebody has leads and they don't know what to do those leads, they have VAs that are calling and they just don't know how to take it through to the finish line, or they're new and they're finding leads, we help people close their deals. If they already got contracts, but they don't have the time to dispo those deals, they can't really sell those contracts because it is 2 completely different business models to a degree. We help people do that. Our primary business is single family. We have a lot of portfolio deals that we're working right now. We are talking about a multifamily deal today. I messaged Pace on that's in Arizona. So we're getting a lot more into multifamily. Towards the end of the year, that's a big focus as well. We do some land stuff. Don't do anything commercial. So mainly single family. A lot of portfolios going into multifamily. But just pretty much any aspect of the real estate business that's residential based, we're a part of or will be a part of.
You talked earlier about when you started, the people you started with, that team, and some of them have drifted away, and you moved on by yourself at that point in time. And of course, you have a new team that's built now. And we hear about the acquisitions manager and the dispo manager and the integrator, transaction coordinator, and the avatars. What do you see yourself as, or what have you identified clearly? Obviously you have, but for those that are kind of new to the call or new to Sub 2, where do you place yourself? How does one see you for the role that you perform for your team?
So the fair answer is I don't know, and I'll tell you why. Because I'm on about 10 or 12 hours of Zooms every single day, and unfortunately that caused me to miss the avatar training. So I don't know what my avatar according to Pace's training is, but I will tell you what I know about myself, right? The reason I love that Pace put that avatar training together is because knowing yourself, identity, is a big part of what I teach. In A Different Life, I used to teach about it all the time. I actually have a little book written about it. I have a whole series of books written on identity because I think it's such a foundational part of life. Knowing yourself, knowing other people. If you can figure that out, you got like 2/3 of life, going in your favor. Most of us struggle in life because we haven't figured out one or both of those things. That being said, for me, JJ, I am an outside of the box person. So pardon my tangent, everybody. As you can tell, I tend to go on rabbit trails here, but hopefully it circles back. I really appreciate what you said, JJ, about you having a tough childhood. I did too. I went to 2 to 3 schools a year almost my entire life, right? I am half Puerto Rican, raised by a white mother in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in the middle of gang culture, right? So what that meant in real life is that I went outside and I looked like everybody, but I did not sound like everybody. And for anybody who ever grew up in a gang environment, when you got to walk through a bunch of different gang neighborhoods on the way home, the reason people join gangs is to be safe. When you're not in one of those gangs, you're not safe anywhere, right? So it does create a little bit of a tough upbringing. And so I definitely had a very, very interesting childhood. I had a very interesting thing growing up, and I had a lot of different iterations in life, just like a lot of us. But what I will tell you guys is this: the most valuable thing I ever did was get comfortable with who I was, right? Now, why is this important? Because some of you guys might be like, yeah, but everybody does that. Do we? Right? If we grew up in Western society and went to public school, our upbringing in that environment teaches us how to fit in, not how to be your own unique self, right? And what we don't realize, because we're children and we're in the moment, most of fitting in means adapting ideas and belief systems and connecting yourself with groups that you don't necessarily 100% agree with, but you don't want to sit alone at lunch. So you find yourself identifying with this group of people that you actually don't really like that much a lot of times, right? But you don't want to be left out. And what happens is, over time, what that creates is an adult who just says yes to things that they don't really feel comfortable with, because nobody wants to be the odd man or the odd woman out, right? Everybody wants to fit in. And fortunately, and this wasn't fortunate in the moment, fortunately for me, life never allowed me to do that. I'll give you guys an example, right? How many of you guys ever heard the thing, leaders are readers? Anybody ever heard that phrase? How many of you guys think it's very, very important to be a reader, to read books, to grow if you want to be successful in life, right? Well, yeah. Pretty much everybody's going to say yes, right? Yeah. JJ, when I first got out of the military, I was like, oh, personal development, let's do it. I'm going to do the thing. I'm going to read. I'm going to get up early, and I'm going to do some push-ups, and I'm going to read a book, and I'm going to meditate. I got up, went to meditate, fell asleep. Read the book, also fell asleep, right? So what I found myself doing is that, this sounds really simple, but this was like 5-10 years of my life. I'm going out of my way to do all of these different things that everybody says I need to do to be successful. And all it did was result in me failing miserably. So what happens is now I'm disappointed in myself. I'm like, wait, hold on. Who do you think you are? You think you can be successful, but you can't even do the basic tenets of success, like read a book, like get up and meditate before you start your day. Everybody who's successful says you have to do this. You're not doing it. Now that's why you're not successful. And I almost believed that, right? I almost believed that. And I almost got myself defeated, but I'm really hard headed and I'm not really big on quitting. So I kept going. And then all of a sudden, one day, here's what happened. One day, I was listening to an audiobook, right? And this was in like 2007, right? And so audiobooks, it's not like I could go to YouTube because I don't even know if YouTube was, I think YouTube was a thing. I don't remember. But I was listening to some audiobook off of some link on some bootleg website. And I'm listening to this book in the background, not paying attention, right? Like I'm doing other stuff. And then one day, somebody, like a couple weeks later, a topic comes up on the topic of this book that I was reading, but I wasn't reading it. I never picked it up. I was just listening to it halfway while I'm doing other things. And I remember to this day, somebody talking to me and I answered their question about a topic. And after I answered their question, I was like, wait, how did I know that? Like I had no clue how I knew the answer to that question. I was like, okay, anyways, like that's what I think. So don't quote me if I'm, wrong. Like a week later, I end up hearing that again in the book. I was like, oh my God, that's how I knew the answer. And JJ, it was at that moment I learned something about myself. I've been spending the last 5-7 years beating myself up because I don't care how many times I read this stupid book, I couldn't get it to register. I would fall asleep, I'd get distracted, I'd read the same paragraph 15 times, know nothing. I couldn't finish a book to save my life. I couldn't sit down and sit still to save my life. But then all of a sudden I realized that I was memorizing like a library, everything that I heard. And it was at that moment I was like, oh my gosh. So I learned that I was something called an auditory learner. If I hear something, it sticks in my head. I don't even know why it sticks in my head. My girlfriend makes fun of me because I can quote movies from 20 years ago that I haven't seen in 20 years, right? But I can't read a paragraph in a piece of paper. Ask anybody on my team that works with me regularly. They do not send me long messages. They send me voice clips because I won't read it. My brain can't process it, right? So what's the moral of this story? And I know this is a long thing. When we talk about identity and knowing yourself, when you talk about avatars, I spent almost a decade of my life feeling like a failure because, like Albert Einstein said, right, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it's going to live in its entire life thinking that it's stupid. And I was judging my ability to succeed based on the standard of the book, right? Because all the books said it. And it took me a long time to get comfortable recognizing that that book wasn't written for me, right? It was written for a lot of people. And for the people to whom it was written, amazing. God bless you. Take that book and change your life. But if that book doesn't work with you, recognize that that's okay, because there's a different book that's out there for you. And if there's not, it's probably because you're the one that's supposed to be writing it. Learn what works for you and be that person unapologetically at 1,000%, and don't quit until you get it. Because I can tell you right now, I probably retain more than most human beings on the planet. But if you would have asked me that in 2010, I would have thought I was a failure because I couldn't understand a basic paragraph in a book, right? So know yourself. And then you start to understand your superpower. And when you know your superpower, that's how people call on you to change the world.
That is huge. That is huge. Hey, we're gonna roll along. We're gonna take one question. We got someone has a question out here, but and then we're gonna jump into the breakout rooms, and we are gonna give 7 to 8 people a chance to be in a breakout room with Daniel himself. So don't go anywhere, everybody. Don't go anywhere. Jasper Son, you are on with Daniel Quijano. What's your question, brother?
Hey, Daniel. Obviously, I'm working with you on your team, and I hate it. No, I'm joking. I love it. I love working, but I'm obviously, like, the main reason of me joining your team and part of it is because I want to become a better closer. And I don't know if the steps I'm taking right now is the right steps to becoming a better closer, because obviously I'm only kind of working part-time on your team from like 10 to 2 that time frame on certain days, and then I'm doing some cold calling on my own, just to generate more leads for my own business. But if my focus is just to focus on, getting better at closing deals and becoming a better closer, is that cold calling part just even necessary? Like, is that even worth my time?
So you're going to get a lot of answers to this question. And not to sound cliche, you got to kind of find what works for you, because that does matter. Everybody learns differently, and that's going to be a big part of it. Knowing what works for you. What I will say is this: I come from old school sales, so my first hardcore sales job was doing like penny stocks, like the Wolf of Wall Street, right? The legal version, right? Not with the drugs and all that. And we spent our entire day calling stockbrokers, who are statistically some of the highest trained salespeople in the country. And so you're calling salespeople who know all of the tactics that you're doing. And they're like, what kind of takeaway was that? Ask for the sale. Like, they're hitting you, they're coaching you through your call as you're calling them. So you got to be on your game. You got 7 seconds that you're getting hung up on and cussed at within that period of time. So for me, one thing that I know is that everybody who did that for any period of time and got good at it, they can survive doing anything, right? Because, if you can, it's like running with weights on, right? If you run with weights on, when you take those weights off, everything else feels lighter. Cold calling is the hardest aspect of most businesses. So if you can get good at that, having a conversation with warm sellers is usually just like, have you noticed being on the team, having the warm conversations versus the cold conversations? Are you noticing a difference in just the feel when you're calling them?
It's like totally different. I was actually so surprised at how easy it was to move into these conversations when I was talking to the warm leads, just because they are actual warm leads and it's not me just cold calling them.
Yeah. So honestly, Jasper, I would say first, know what works for you. But if you can continue getting the reps in with cold calling, if you can handle getting punched in the face, you can handle the rest of it. The rest of it's going to come really easy. That's not the worst way to practice if you have the time for it. Now, the other question is velocity of time and money, right? Is there a point where there's a diminishing return? Because yes, you're getting better incrementally, but you're also losing a bunch of time that you could be doing actually working with serious leads. There's a balance, right? And I think you think about your business in a thorough enough way that you can kind of find what that balance is. So just be aware of that. But yeah, I would say keep calling until it doesn't make sense anymore.
Okay. Yeah. I think I'm just going to do that then.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Jasper, thank you so much. Mark Chang, you were on with Daniel. What's up, brother?
Hey, how's it going, JJ?
I'm good.
Always a pleasure to be on your on the Zoom. It's always value, so really appreciate that. And Daniel, thank you for everything that you said. It just hit on so many different levels, from your experience, both personally in your journey, as well as in your business. I think one of the things that always comes up is like, I think I'm the only one that has hit these hurdles. Partnerships that didn't go through, losing money, trying things that didn't work. What you said about the audible learning with reading, it was like, wow. Like, I mean, we hear these things, we learn about a lot of these things, but when I'm hearing somebody in your experience and your level, and as a leader in the community saying that says a lot, right? Because I keep trying to force text learning into my brain, right? And but I love audible learning, right? Like if I'm driving or on the motorcycle or bicycling and I'm listening to it, it's like just more and more and more. But if I have to read a book, I'm like passing out before the end of the sentence, right? Like, I feel like I'm just traveling uphill with a steep incline, So one of the things I think the reason for me reaching out is saying this: I can learn on my own and continue to learn these hurdles. But what kept ringing in my mind was like, Daniel's going through a lot of the experiences I've gone through, and you're 2 years out in certain experiences and certain things that you come to realize. So I can still go through those, or I can have a conversation with you. And I'm going to ask you this on this platform in front of everybody: like, how do I get in contact with you and have maybe a 15-minute Zoom or whatever, right? I mean, I don't want to take up too much time with everybody here, but what does that look like?
So there's actually a couple answers to that. And I'm pulling this up for a reason. I've spent the great majority of my morning cleaning out my old texts. And I don't know if you guys can see this at the bottom. I still have 186 unread text messages.
Wow.
Right. And by the end of the day, that's going to be well over 200. So I put a lot of time into, I put a lot of time into bringing that down. I have nothing but the respect for Pace to being able to keep his numbers down, because he probably gets way more messages and still keeps it managed. I'm working on a way to get better at that, because I know there's a lot of people that reach out that I want to be able to connect with, right? Anchor said, what is your, sorry, brother, I appreciate you. But like, look at Samir on the team, right? Samir was like, dude, I blew you up for like a good month and a half. Samir's like an invaluable member on my team, right? And the only reason he is because he just didn't give up in reaching out to me. And I hate that that's just what it is, because you get a lot of messages and it's just that I don't see them, right? And then there'll be some questions where I'm like, I really want to take the time to answer that, so I'm not going to give like this quick little response. But then because it requires more time and you want to respect that time, it ends up going to the bottom of the list and it slips your mind. So the simple answer is I'm working on a way to get better than that. 2, you're actually on my list of people to get back in touch with, because I know you have been reaching out and I've wanted to connect with you. You were one of the first people that reached out when we said that we were looking to bring people on the team, right? And so whether or not that you still have a need for that or not, I still want to reach back out to you. And then lastly, that's why one of the things that I've been putting together, and it's still up in the air, so I don't really have anything to present to anybody, but I am putting together like a sales course and a training thing for people who are interested in getting better at stuff like this. Because for me, I think at the end of the day, sales at its core is psychology and communication. So is life. Right. It all comes together. And I think we segment them unnecessarily. And so I want to create a scenario where maybe people who, like yourself, who are interested in getting better at these things, we can all come together, we can connect and be able to just spend time and really have just good conversations, even if it is as a group.
Yeah, 100%. You said a lot of things that really resonated. The psychology part of it is so important, right? I mean, it's mindset versus methodology, right? Probably methodology is by 10% and mindset's 90%. But what does that actually look like? Like when you were talking throughout this entire Zoom, it was just like check mark, check mark, check mark, check mark, check mark, right? But then the next part of it is okay, there's the awareness, I'm taking the accountability, but then the part that's really going to change things is the CTA, is the call to action. What's the next step in this process, right? And without action, I'm still stagnant in the responsibility part. It's like, I'm taking ownership of it. What can I do next? So, transparency wise, I am part of another team right now. But, I ended up realizing that what I was seeking is a lot of what's happening in this Zoom, which is like, I grow through feedback, right? I need feedback, because if not, I'm just in the dark room, not figuring out where I'm going, right? Just bouncing from wall to wall. I want to know, am I getting close? Is it hotter? Is it getting colder? Like, it doesn't need like an exact answer, but I need to know where I am on that barometer. Right? Am I moving the needle along, or am I going back? And for me, if I continue to stumble, which is what I used to do, which is be a solopreneur. But what I see in sub 2 is that it not necessarily the answer is, has anybody else gone through this? Like, am I getting closer to a thing, or am I way off here? Am I dreaming something right now, or is it like, no, actually we went through that, and actually you're getting close. We don't know what this is, but it seems like this through experience, if that makes sense.
It does. So, and I think this is actually valuable for a lot of people, right? Because all you're hearing Mark do is verbalize what a lot of us never take the time to even understand, right? And that's his truth. And I think a lot of times we have to take the time to really understand what our truth is, understand what our struggle is, because if you can't define it, you're gonna have a really hard time fixing it. And so, Mark, you and I are actually very similar in that regard, right? Because we need to understand what it is. We want the feedback. There are people who are not like that. They don't want feedback. That for them is an attack. That for them, you're trying to talk down to them, right? And for us, and it's like, no, that's not, you're not. I'm not taking that as an insult. I need that. Please tell me, right? And so understanding that is very important. What I will say is this, right? And hopefully I can get some information out there and maybe we can connect more. And, I love conversations like this. But what I will say is this, guys, for me, when I had that epiphany about the reading and how I learned things, that was 15 years ago, right? From that time to the point that I actually got comfortable in my own skin and was like me, don't like me, right? Here's me in a nutshell. I want everybody to appreciate me and feel like I'm adding value to them, and I really want to help as many people as possible. And I simultaneously do not care what any human being on this planet thinks about me or what I'm doing or my decisions whatsoever. And that sounds like an opposing dichotomy, but it's not. They work hand in hand. And you don't really understand that until you get comfortable enough in yourself where you realize I'm going to live and be me unapologetically. I don't need permission to be me because I know I'm coming from a place of love and I'm coming from a place of compassion. And if somebody can't appreciate that, there's nothing I can do to get them to appreciate that. That just means that me and that person are not for one another. Instead of trying to change and become someone I'm not to appease someone that's not for me, let me be comfortable in who I am, because it's going to just remove the people who are never meant for me anyways and bring the people who are. That freedom will change your life. And Mark, to your question is, you're in a community where you're going to find those answers fast tracked. It took me a long time because I was a long time where I wasn't a part of communities like this. But you'll realize it's layers. And the more layers come off, you're like, oh my gosh, I thought I was done, but I'm just getting started. And it will come. You can't have this level of interest in growing this way without it coming.
Yeah, 100%. I think for me, maybe 4 years ago, I didn't have the vocabulary. I didn't have the mindset to be able to engage even in a conversation like this. But where I am now, it's new territory, right? So I don't have as much in my day-to-day community to be able to have certain conversations, but I'm exploring that. I mean, I'm currently right now in a junior college, signing up for junior college classes, right? Like I'm literally taking their office, and actually I need to shut down the window. Just literally taking somebody's office just to have this conversation and waiting for the counselor. But I'm looking at this course in my life right now as an 18-year-old, right? Like literally college mindset, right? And sub 2 is amazing because it feels like college where there are a bunch of people, there are so many classes, there's so much abundance, but you sometimes have to make sure you know what this semester looks like. Like, are you taking marine biology and architecture and then horticulture, and then it's like there's so much, right? But like this semester, what is figuring out what your end goal is, right? For me, I'm here and it's just taking one course in computer aided design is why I originally came down to Southern California before COVID, right? So my original plan for COVID was to be an architect to help build the building for my church, and I thought that was what my future was. And then they had a different direction for me, and all of a sudden I picked up a course previously before sub 2, and I went door knocking, and then I cold called. Everybody I started with quit. And, my parents and everybody didn't care during COVID because they had other things on their mind. Coming out of it is, where's the results? We need to see some results, right? And I guess that aligns with what you were saying is there's certain conversations where it's like, I've made the decision, like that's cemented, right? I am a real estate investor. I know that more than anything. Being a real estate investor grows your mindset, grows your reach and your impact. Plus, this is something I can do. I mean, I had this choice. Anything I do has to have a minimum of a 10-year, commitment. But in real estate investing, it's like 30-year commitments, right? Those 10 years. And before I get on tangents, that's why I love how hearing you talk. I was like, that's how my brain works. There's somebody else speaking my words and living an experience like. When you go on tangents, I go, that's where my brain goes. What the heck?
Yeah. And here's the thing, right? And for everybody, I guess to wrap that up, for me, the example that I like to use a lot, guys, I think a lot of times we gauge our success on the wrong things, right? If we were both getting started in business and I want to build skyscrapers and you want to build single family houses, you're going to have 50 single family houses built before I get one skyscraper done. The world that we live in will say that you're more successful, right? Because they're gauging off the wrong metrics. And the reality is foundations don't have windows. The bigger the building that you're trying to build, the longer you're going to live in a world with no apparent success or progress, right? Because it's not surface level progress. It's process that's underneath that most people can't see unless they take the time to look within. And that's one of the things we don't realize in life. And I think a lot of us are getting mad because we think we're not progressing, but we don't realize we're just pouring really, really good and solid foundations. That's a good thing, in case anybody didn't realize.
You know, Daniel, I think, you know, that's one of the biggest takeaways I'm getting right now. All the things you said is what you just said right now, is that everything we do lays the foundation. And sometimes we don't feel that we're making progress, and we don't feel that we're gaining any ground. But in actuality, every effort we make, every step we make is another building block in the foundation of where we're going. Yep. I think that's so huge. Hey, brother, we're going to cut it because we're getting into like 5 hours now. But not that one. I know you and we could keep going all night long. I know this, but we're for the sake of your time, you know, and I don't think we want to burn up the YouTube thing for forever. We'll keep it to an hour or so. But I want to thank you so much for being with us today. Gold nuggets all over the place. I know by the chat, people were loving what you had to say. I am completely honored to have you here. You know what? I'm gonna bring up one last question. Yvonne, if you can make it quick, we have one quick question for Daniel, then we're gonna terminate. Do you have something for Daniel, Yvonne?
Yeah. Daniel, knowing like you and JJ and the leaders of Sub2, how busy you are and how many emails and texts you get and how it takes you time to get through that. For the newbies out there, how would you, as far as following up with people, and like you said, Samir just constantly nagged you. And I've done the same with you. But I just, you know, I don't want to be a pest, but at the same time, you know, what do I need to do on my end? Let me help you. So what can I do to get, you know, answers, my answer answered from, or my question answered from you?
Me personally, or do you mean in general for anybody?
Well, you personally, like for the deal that you and I were talking, that we've been working on, you know?
Yeah.
Or any question, if someone needed to get in contact with you, you know, just what's the best way to get your attention to get those questions answered?
I think that's a really good question. I think I can answer it simply, right? So on the side of the person who's trying to get somebody's attention, you got to do what is organic for you and be honest, right? If you feel, there's a saying that says the fortune's in the follow-up, right?
Right.
I know people that follow up really aggressive and weird, and people that follow up that are just, hey, consistent, just following up, hey, just following up. So just, you know, just don't be weird, right? Now, obviously this isn't directed to you because you've never been weird, right? But there are some people who would take something like that out of context. So if you're interested in getting in contact with somebody, be consistent. If you're trying to get a hold of like a Pace Morby or something like that, you know, try to do something to lead with value. But always remember one thing that's really important, which is remember that most of the time, because we get in our heads, a lot of times it's easy to take it personally and think that they intentionally ignored something. And the amount of times I feel horrible because I'm like, oh my God, like I don't even know how many times I've typed a message and just thought I hit send and didn't hit send, right? It just happens.
Right.
So always remember when you're approaching that. From my side of thing, Yvonne, this is why, because I recognize this is a problem and I don't want it to remain a problem, I'm working on getting systems in place, right? So the deal that you brought me, it's supposed to be going through the system. It did not, because I broke my own rules. And as a result, you weren't getting the updates that you were supposed to be getting. I'll just text me afterwards and I'll give you the update on that because we have updates. But I'm working on fixing the system so that way moving forward, if people want to collaborate with us or work with us or connect, I want to reduce that, right? So for people who are watching, know which side of that fence you're on. If you're the person trying to get in contact with somebody, approach it with the right context. If you are becoming, because it seems like you go from not having anything to do to, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do next. That's how it works for me, right? And I think that's a good problem to have because you'd rather have more to deal with than less. Right. And the question is, once again, you just rise to the occasion, right? The rising tide raises all ships. Don't let holes be in your ship so you sink, right? Rise to that occasion, and it's going to be time, right? I've spent the majority of this year working on these systems. It wasn't an overnight thing, and I've probably made some people mad in that process. I don't want to, but again, if they're not approaching it with understanding, maybe we weren't the right fit, at least at that season.
Right.
The people who did understand, they're still here, and I think if we all lead with the right intent and then do our best to grow in our actions, so we can't just live off of intent, but we're actually doing things to match our integrity with what we do, I think we'll be fine. So, but to answer your question specifically about us, text me and I'll give you the update.
Okay. Thank you.
Again, Daniel, I want to thank you for being here. Many things you said have tied into things I say. I talk about networking with intent, and that means, having a strategy for how to contact people, which I teach in my Facebook 101. And what Facebook 101 is me just sharing my knowledge for free, just because when I was new, I would have loved there to have been a place for me to go. But thank you so much. If you guys are watching the YouTube channel right now, if you've been, watching this video on YouTube, please like Daniel's video down. Please hit the like button. Please leave comments there on the YouTube channel for Daniel's presentation. And, look for more of our content coming up. We've got more great speakers coming up, more of the rock stars out of Sub 2. And I just want to thank all of you for showing up today that are on the call right now, and those of you that are showing up to watch the video. Just appreciate everybody's participation. And Daniel, so much appreciate you, my friend, knowing that you've got other film responsibilities right now, as well as your schedule. I know what mine's like, so I know your schedule's got to be, twice as crazy as mine. But right now, guys, we're going to sign off and say thank you for joining us. We're going to end the recording. And for those of you that are on the call, hang on, because we're going to go to the breakout rooms. Over now, guys.